And welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a photojournalist, no other than Mr. David Swanson.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Mr. David. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, I'm David Swanson. I've been a news photographer since I was 15. I ended up going to journalism school, ended up working at the Philadelphia Inquirer for about 33 years. And we all know the way newspapers are going. Decided to move to Los Angeles about 6 years ago, and I've been freelancing out here. Haven't looked back.
Never look back. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. David. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today, let's talk about you. You won the Pulitzer Prize in 1999 for your feature photography for family affected by AIDS. Can you
No,
take
that's
us
not me.
back?
That's not me.
Is this not you?
No,
So, so can you tell about something that you won for being you?
won the Pulitzer in 2012, and that was at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And we did a series on violence in schools being underreported, and that changed policy in Philadelphia. I'm known possibly for the picture you're showing for my podcast there. That's 9/11. That's the workers going in on the next day. And I might be known for some stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan and Haiti.
Hmm. So the future of photography captures intimate human moments. What is your philosophy for building the trust necessary to document people's lives during their most vulnerable times?
Well, again, like you said, it's about building trust. It's about not being a threat. It's about asking uh, to be in that area with them, and just taking it step by step and incrementally. And one thing that helps now with digital photography is showing them the photo on the back of the camera and going from there. When you arrive at a scene, you always try to take a safety photo, so you have something. But as you spend time there, and you're not always taking pictures, you're talking to everybody. You are absolutely gaining their trust.
Were there any specific shots or moments that were almost too painful to capture, and how do you navigate line between being a journalist and a compassionate human being on those instances?
Well, in 2004, I was embedded with the Marines in Iraq. Well, in Ramadi, Iraq. Being embedded is a very difficult thing because they're the ones feeding you, they're the ones housing you, they're the ones giving you protection. And on April of 2004, we walked about 12 miles around a perimeter on patrol. I talked to a second lieutenant about his life. He asked me about mine. We talked about fishing in Colorado, and we'd like to do that one day. And the next day was an ambush, and 12 of these Marines I walked with were killed. 3 days later, I'd be shot in the arm. So you never know what's going to happen. I can say that for sure. But you try to have the ability to talk to a president the same way you would talk to a garbage man, or a garbage man as you would to a president.
How did winning a journalist's highest honor at relatively young age change your career trajectory and expectations placed on you?
I have just always been more fascinated, and this is probably not the best thing to say in this podcast, but I've always been more fascinated with the photographs in the newspapers and Life magazine than reading about it. I could memorize who took the pictures more so than I could memorize who wrote the article or wrote the short story or wrote the book. Did that answer
Oh,
your question a bit?
Definitely. On major stories and ethical challenges, covering a tragedy like things that you told us, what was the guiding principle for you and your team uh, to be let's say courageous enough to show to the world?
Well, as far as I know, you only get one shot on this planet. And my parents had passed uh, before Iraq and Afghanistan became in the storyline. I'd like to think they were watching over me. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but I'd like to think I had a purpose. I'd like to think I was put on this planet to tell some stories, and of those, they involved risks, calculated risks, and I took those chances. And so far it's worked out. I'm 60 years old.
As a photographer, you often a silent witness. Has there ever been a situation where you felt compelled to put the camera down and intervene? How do you live with the choices you make in the field?
I cannot. Nothing comes to mind where I've ever put the camera down. Uh, what you have now with social media and hindsight and Monday morning quarterback are people with their iPhones capturing scenes, and in the comments section they'll say, "Why didn't you put your camera down or your phone down and help that person?" They didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, the event unfolded in front of their lens. There has not been, in my mind, one incident where I stepped out of my shoes and was a participant in the scene. Not that I wouldn't help somebody, but I was there for a different reason. Just as the police are there for a different reason, just as the ambulance crews are there for a different reason. I try to be impartial. That's a very hard thing to do, but it's the goal we have.
So, Mr. David, tell us one of the devastating scene that you want to share to our listeners.
Well, again, I've photographed 9/11. I photographed the earthquake in Haiti 3 times. That was about, to the best of my knowledge, 200,000 people killed. But I have never seen such devastation as the fires in January of this year in Los Angeles. The Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. It was house upon house upon house upon house, neighborhood to neighborhood, that was just flattened. There was not that much loss of life, and that's a hard thing to say, but I think it was around 30 people. And again, that's one plus one plus one plus one, but it wasn't 200,000. And an earthquake looks like one thing, but a fire just is undescribably damaging.
Let's talk about the evolution of journalism and the business. The industry has transformed dramatically from when you started. From your perspective, what is the single greatest loss and the single greatest gain for photojournalism in digital age?
Well, it's one of the hugest ones is the transition from film to digital. That's obvious. We used to take uh, we would do an assignment on 2 rolls of film, which would have been 36 frames each. Now I'm not shocked when I come back with 3,000, 4,000 pictures, because why not? Uh, the ability now with digital, I can send to editors and outlets straight from the camera, literally seconds after the event has happened. That to me is incredible.
Incredible indeed, for sure. With the rise of fake news and public distrust in media, what responsibility do photojournalists have in rebuilding that trust, and how does it still image combat misinformation?
I would like to think that photographers, news photographers now are going to become ever so more important with the advent of AI and the fact that everything is so easily manipulated. I wish there was a way, and I'm hoping they're working on it now, to have some kind of token or watermark on a photograph that verifies this was taken and it has not been altered whatsoever. That a JPEG is a JPEG, unaltered, a raw file is a raw file, unaltered, and there's some kind of way to let people know this is not AI.
Yes, people, that's not AI. Authentic, authentic indeed. How has a 24/7 news cycle and the demand for instant content changed the way photojournalists work? Is there still room for a long term, deeply reported projects that often lead to award winning piece?
There are photographers that still do long-term projects, but again, Life magazine is gone. Time magazine is not as revered as it once was. I think people absolutely need something instantaneously, and TikTok and Instagram and even Facebook are satisfying that urge. Uh, I wish there were more social news sites that were of importance. But again, you know, think of the photograph of Eddie Adams took in Vietnam of the execution in the streets. Nobody remembers that there was a video of that. Everybody only remembers that single frame of the officer holding up his pistol to the man's head. So I don't think still photography is going anywhere, but the cameras these days will take 40 frames a second, and video is 30 frames a second. So what's the difference? It still boils down to a still photo.
Hmm. With the news shrinking, Mr. David, where do you see the future home for ambitious public service photojournalism? Is it nonprofits, online outlets, or somewhere else?
I think there will be some newspapers that stick around that will become nonprofit. Uh, you have photographers working for the radio, that the radio refers to a web page in a long-term story. Maybe photography becomes more of a podcast where people follow a photographer for a week or a year. I don't know. I mean, it's if I knew, I'd be doing it.
Definitely. And looking back over your entire career, is there a single photograph or story that you're most proud of and why?
I still think it's Iraq. That affected me deeply. There's a picture of a young Marine after the firefight with a windshield full of bullet-ridden holes, and he got in the Humvee himself, and I took a picture of him through the bullet holes and showed him the newspapers the next day on my laptop. And he laughed, and his friends kidded him, but then he died a day later. And that will affect somebody, and it affected me.
Mr. David, as a photojournalist, what are your short term and long term goals?
Short-term goals are still to be working. This is not work for me. This is a lifestyle, and I want to do it as long as I live. I want to be able to photograph what's around me. I want to be able to show somebody what they wouldn't see if they were standing next to me, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
That's a short-term and a long-term goal, to keep doing this, to be able to be upright with a camera in my hand and just making images that affect me. And I want to tell a good story. I want you to be able to look at the photograph and feel something.
Good luck to that, Mr. David. I'm looking forward for more success for sure. And if you could give one piece of advice to a young photographer picking up a camera today who wants to tell important human stories, what would it be?
Have a great sense of curiosity. have a curiosity for the world, be nice to everybody because you'll meet them again. I like the Buddhist quote of everything. Let me think for a second. Sorry.
No worries, go
Everything
ahead.
is connected. Everything changes. Pay attention. Oh, and also a young photographer, I would say to ask themselves if they were standing in the right spot at the right time and what's going to happen 10 seconds from now. Not an hour, but just what's going to happen 10 seconds from now. And am I here at the right time? Is it better for me to be here tomorrow or later in the day? That's important to me.
Well, thank you for that advice, Mr. David. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
There's been a lot. There's been a lot of photo books, but the one I picked from the shelf today is called Blood and Champagne. It's the life story of the famed photographer Robert Capa. And he's most known for his picture of the D-Day landing and the Spanish Civil War soldier uh, getting shot in the head and falling backwards.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. David. And tell us, your work often gives a voice to the voiceless. How do you ensure that your photography is a representation with the community rather than just a depiction of a community?
Well, that's actually a very good question. All I can do is my best. I think I have a good heart, and all I can do is my best. It's my interpretation of what I think I'm seeing.
Hmm. Do your best, for sure. The tools of the trade have changed from darkrooms to digital editing. How have you adapted your technical process, and what has remained fundamentally unchanged about the art of capturing a moment?
Digital photography is very much like when we shot slides. You have to underexpose about a stop. You can you have much more latitude if you make a mistake with the exposure. That's something we do change. That's not subjective. But as far as adding saturation, adding sharpness, no, we don't do that. Even though it's easily able to be done, it's much more convenient to shoot digital. The disadvantage is once I thought I was done shooting film and having to store all the negatives, all of the sleeves of negatives, I now have to have so many hard drives that fail and so many different cords and so many different chargers. It's probably twice as much space to take up with digital.
Mr. David, how has the economics of photojournalism changed with the decline of print media, and what are the new business models for sustaining this vital work?
I think for an editorial photographer, which is myself, there are fewer and fewer and fewer staff jobs at magazines and newspapers. So, being a freelancer, I have to buy my own equipment, my own car, health insurance. That's put on that's put on the photographer now, whereas once that was covered by the company. The money is pretty equal as far as the different outlets. Certainly we could use more. There's a lot more people now. There's a lot more photographers now doing the same thing. So, it is a very saturated market. So,
So, what is the role of long term in depth personal project in an era that often seems to demand instant disposal content?
I'm sorry, help me out. Say that again, please.
So, what is the role of a long term, in depth of personal project in an era that often seems to demand instant or
Right.
disposal content?
I think that photographer might be working toward a book or a grant or social societal reasons to make change of policy. They're few and far between versus daily editorial photographers.
How do you navigate the practical dangers of the job, from physical risks in conflict zones to the threat of detention or having your equipment confiscated?
It's all about reading the road, reading the area, reading the people, having eyes in the back of my head. In a war zone, you don't want to stand in the same spot more than a 15 seconds or so. You don't want a sniper to be able to zero in on you. In an urban setting, you have to always have a back door. One thing I also photograph are the wildfires. You always have to have excuse me, you always have to have a back door, a way out. You point your car away from the fire. It's situational awareness, and I've been lucky so far.
Well, indeed, you're lucky, Mr. David. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, you are lucky for sure. And I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 fourth season. I'm a baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in the third season, and Movie 101 Review Music 101 and fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in each first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. David, what is the story you still have not told but feel is urgently important for the public to see?
I think people need to realize how much journalists are affected by what they cover, that they're not immune to having emotions after the broadcast, after the photograph is printed, and it's cumulative. It's not necessarily any one thing, but just years and years and years of photographing fires and police and crime scenes and accidents and wars and floods and hurricanes. It adds up. It adds up. So I would tell younger photographers, know that this is going to happen, probably going to happen, and to take care of yourself and have a good support system, and that it's okay to be emotional about it, and it's okay to talk to other colleagues about it. The bravado of it is not necessarily a good thing. So,
Mr. David Swanson, again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your podcast, or whatever projects you want to promote on Book 101 Review?
well, again, I started this podcast called Just the Photographer with David Swanson, and that title stems from me showing up at an assignment or me showing up wherever, and somebody would inevitably ask me, are you the writer or are you just the photographer? And sometimes I would respond with, when your house is on fire, are you going to save the letters or are you going to save the photographs? So there you go. Just the photographer.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. David Swanson, because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering episodes of the podcast itself. So, Mr. David, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was fun. I have had a nice experience with you.
No worries at all, Mr. David, and more to come, people. See you soon.